Hey everybody, this is Alzarath, and welcome to another episode of Deck Breakdown. This is a special episode that's brought to you by request, and it's the coverage of the expansion card spoilers. I'm going to start off by listing the cards that we have exposed, and then I'm going to give my opinions on them, and afterwards. Basically, this is so people who just want to know what the cards do can just watch the first part of this, and then people who want to hear my opinion can watch the remaining parts of this. The expansion cards that they've released so far are all allies, all 6 of them. That's 3 shadow allies and 3 human allies. I'm really praying they release something other than allies in the next expansion card spoiler, which I don't know when that's going to be. I would love to see some other factor of this expansion, such as attachments or weapons or armor or any of this stuff, so we can get more of the flavor of this attachment released and give a better idea of what's actually coming from this expansion, because I believe they said that the first expansion is going to be 150 cards. The first game was 200 cards. So there's still a lot left to reveal since this is only 6 cards so far. The 3 shadow allies are the Fury and Terror. It's a 4/3, and when Fury and Terror is summoned, all allies in play take 2 damage. And this hero is immune to fire damage, so he doesn't take damage from it whenever he's summoned, and is killed instantly by ice or if he's frozen. This is frozen as being the status implied by Freezing Grasp. The second shadow ally is the Io Void Leviathan, and when this ally just comes into play doing 2/4, he's electrical damage, but whenever you use a shadow ability, you or your opponent or anything else like that, he gets +1 base attack and health, which can make this creature become very large, and I'll give you my opinions on him in just a little bit, because I think that one's a rather interesting card. The Twisted Familiar is a 2-cost ally. He's a 1/3. It's not bad for 2 costs. It's not a Pewin, but its abilities make up for it. Because whenever an opposing hero or ally deals ability damage to the Twisted Familiar, they take 1 damage. This means like Deathmage Thaddeus and, say, Eldwin, dealing damage to it. The Twisted Familiar can also be sacrificed for 0 resources to restore. For 0 resources to restore 2 used resources. This could be interesting for a certain ally. Certain hero. Oops. I keep doing that. Anyway, as far as the human allies go, we have the Paladin of Inoxio. He reduces the fire and ice damage done to both the Paladin and yourself by 1. I don't know if these stack or not. I would wager they do, but if they don't, that's still fine. That's a nice little reduction. And I'll cover both contingencies whenever I talk about him. He also has the ability to remove negative effects from target hero or ally. Some people say this will make Jericho even more useless, but I'll give my opinion on that in a little bit, because I think they might be wrong. The Laerian Diplomat, which is the next human ally that was released, is a 2-cost ally, rather cheap. I did notice that we kept around a similar cost release on both the human and shadow allies, but when Laerian Diplomat is summoned, a target opponent ally loses their passive ability until the start of your next turn. He's a 2/2 for 2 resources. That's not great, not bad. We have other creatures like that. I think he'll have his uses, although I don't see him getting mainstream play. As far as the third human release, it's going to be an Artful Squire. The Artful Squire, when summoned, destroys target enemy item with a cost of 4 or less. Basically a human shriek. But you have to place him in the graveyard instead of in play. This means he doesn't trigger traps either. He's a 4-cost and he's a 2/5. There's some unique things about this card, but I'll cover that in a little bit. We're going to go ahead and start on, since we started by listing the shadow allies, I'm going to give you my opinions on the shadow allies first. The Fury and Terror 5 cost means he's going to be a late game card. I don't see him really fitting well into any particular deck. I can sort of see maybe Shadow Warrior decks using him to an extent, or if you're anticipating Molten Destroyers, Supernovas, Fireballs, stuff like that, he might make a presence, although the fact that he only has 3 life kind of plays against him, because you'd think, oh, he's immune to fire, immediately a great tool against mages, because I mean, it makes him immune to Majia's ability, makes him immune to Supernova, makes him immune to Fireball, makes him immune to himself. But the problem is he only has 3 life, which means Lightning Strike can kill this 5 cost ally. And while he can help you take back the board by basically finishing off a bunch of low cost allies, taking out the last little bit of life on maybe a big ally that you'd been hitting a little bit, I don't see him being enough of a game changer unless you're able to drop him as kind of a surprise on turn 10, which is really late game. A lot of games end before that point. So I'm not entirely sure of his usefulness in the long run. He is a good addition, and I do see this being an interesting interplay between both the Furion Terror and the Paladin of Onoxio, because they kind of balance against each other. They're basically the good and evil version of the kind of same thing, seeing as how the Paladin is basically the defensive version and Furion is the offensive version. Personally, I think this ally would be more interesting if instead of dealing 2 fire damage, it sets stuff on fire or ablaze, but that might make it slightly overpowered. I'm not entirely sure. We'll just have to see how the rest of the expansion plays out. I just don't see this card taking mainstream play. It probably will fall into the realm of Molten Destroyer, although Molten Destroyer is more durable, so, and same cost. I don't see this guy seeing much more mainstream than that. His fire attack is interesting. I don't know if they're going to have things that are weak versus fire or not, but maybe. He is killed by the only area of effect damage spell by Priest, which is that the 2 ice damage to all opposing allies, which would kill him instantly. Not really a lot's going to kill him unless mages. Again, mages, you'd think this would be like a great counter against them, but it's not, because Freezing Grasp, Elodwin, like I said, Lightning Strike, all will decimate this guy. And he doesn't really have any lasting use beyond that 2 fire damage. He could be used as a tool for maybe characters that don't have a board wipe on the shadow side, such as the Wolvens and, well, and warriors, pretty much. I think that's about it that don't have board wipes. Well, hunters don't have a board wipe either, but they have other ways of dealing with it. Those 3 might use this as a sort of mini board wipe, but still I don't see it seeing enough play unless you're going to be using him in mass. And even then, he's too expensive for en masse use. The next one, I'm just going to go ahead and move on to the Io Void Leviathan. This one, I see a lot of interesting things being used, because yeah, it is prone to retreat, and it is prone to basically instant death spells and various other things, but so are a lot of other allies. I see this guy actually being an interesting tool for elementalists, because it's shadow. It has access to several abilities that it's got. Let's say I think it's Cobra Demon. Yeah, Cobra Demon, which does the poison effect. For 1 shadow energy, it deals 1 damage and poisons the opponent. Well, the opposing ally. It doesn't work on heroes. That would be a good thing to pump this in, and if you're facing a priest, outside of retreat and flash flood, this ally is going to be a heavy presence, especially if they're using the standard priest draw engine that's out there right now, which is the Wizened Staff, which every single time they use it will pump this guy by 1, both attack and life. Also provides a little bit of a extra place to heal him. Again, this growth is prone to being retreated, Dagger of Unmaking, and any of these other instant kill spells. I see this actually seeing some play, albeit in only specific decks. I see an Elementalist being a very good tool for this. I see Wolven to an extent with Moonstalker. It can use its ability to keep him from being attacked for a turn and pump him. I don't see this being used on the higher cost ability allies. I mean, heroes. I keep switching those up. You'll have to forgive me. I'm a little tired while recording this. Yeah, I see this being an interesting little ally, and I see it being... I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of synergy related to this, because it seems kind of weird to have a one-off like that. And I would like to see more Shadow Energy sinks be introduced. Would be lovely to see. Would be a lot more engaging for your heroes. And yeah, I see this guy having a lot of potential, and in my opinion, this is probably the most promising of the 3 Shadow allies, and I'd probably put it... I'd have to say second most promising of the releases. I like the direction this is going, and I like the interactions that it's kind of demonstrating to us. I like this card. It's definitely one of my thumbs up cards. It's one I'm definitely looking forward to. Now, the last Shadow ally revealed is the Twisted Familiar. The Twisted Familiar has an interesting ability, like I said. The opposing hero or ally that deals ability damage to it takes 1 damage. It's kind of a little mini Deathbone. No. Yeah. I think the ally's name is Deathbone. Effect. Whenever Deathbone dies, it deals 2 damage. Whenever this ally dies, it deals 1 damage. I mean, not whenever it dies, whenever it takes ability damage, it deals 1 damage to that opponent. If you can pump this up, it can actually provide a good thing against, say, Nishaven, Majaya, Eldwin. Dealing that 1 little extra damage can do a lot of good. And if you find you need resources, Twisted Familiar would be very good for doing that. I see it having a nice little interaction with feedback, particularly, as you could sacrifice it, get 2 resources back, and just keep going through the cycle of just getting these resources renewed and giving you a lot of presence by turn 5 even, just to keep recycling your resources. I don't know if this is going to take mainstream play in a lot of decks, but it's going to be an interesting factor. I have a feeling it might replace Carnivore in some decks, simply because it has more survivability, but also because of its interesting little mix of abilities. I don't really think this graphic fits the theme. For some reason, I envision it as being more of an imp by its descriptions. If I were to just read the description, that's what I would think, rather than a little critter skittering through things. I am looking forward to seeing how this card works into decks, and I can see it making some interesting plays possible for Shadow. I like the direction Shadow is going with these releases. I think it would be a shame if they didn't keep running with it, because these are providing interactions that aren't against the flavor of Shadow. I have to say the least what kind of word would that be? Synergistic? Least synergy-driven ally from Shadow would be the Fury Terror. Hands down. He's just a nuke, mini nuke at that enters the field. So I like the direction the Shadow allies are going. The Io Leviathan and Twisted Familiar definitely give me hope for the Shadow allies. And give me reason to believe that Shadow might actually make its presence more in the quick match field, because right now humans dominate. That's hands down the generally accepted fact. You look at the top rankings and most of them are going to be players like use Amber or Eldwin or pretty much human heroes. This is because the ally synergy. With Shadow stepping into the field of having more synergy, I definitely like how this is going to go for them. And it doesn't go against the flavor because it's them being strong against basically specific things. Now that I'm forever into this rambling, I'm going to go ahead and jump on over to the 3 human allies. And I'm going to go in the reverse order that they released them for a reason, because I want to cover the Paladin of Unoxio kind of separate due to the Jericho issue. That was a bit of a discussion. So we'll go in the reverse order they released the human allies. The Artful Squire was the one released 5th out of the entire bunch, so it's the last human ally that was released. And now it does provide something that a lot of human decks have been lacking, that Shriek effect. The Shriek effect being destroy an item of 4 or less. Up until this card, you either had very specific item destruction that destroyed all cost items like Ill-Gotten Gains. Yeah, I'm forgetting the name of it. The warrior ability that destroys weapons and armor. That kind of stuff. Very specific or very broad hero-specific kind of things. The Artful Squire brings in that low-cost destruction to allies that didn't have it, like the human hunters, the human mages, which are the 2 that are lacking it the most, the 2 that were struggling with it, because all they had was the shrine to pop it back to their hand. The Artful Squire has a choice. You can either bring in a 2/5 ally, which with his 5 life, this was mentioned in the Shadow Era Radio episode recently, and I had also mentioned it in the thread whenever this card was first posted, that it is one of the few 4-cost allies that can survive a Fireball, Eldwin, Nishaven. Once you break that 4 life point, the ally becomes extremely hard to remove compared to other allies. This is why Aeon is so useful. This is why Armored Sandworm, even if you ignore its 2 damage reduction, they're so hard to deal with because they require either more than 1 card or more than 1 attacker to really get rid of them outside of special cases. Now, Supernova will get rid of this guy. That's a turn 5 drop too. But by then, you probably want to play something other than Supernova. Yeah, he's only 2 attack, but he is that presence. The destruction of cost 4 or less ability will be very useful when dealing with especially Wolven opponents and some, say, the Mage Draw Engine, pretty much any draw engine right now. It'll destroy Bazaar, it'll destroy Ill-Gotten Gains. It's going to be an interesting card to see if it makes it into main deck play. Personally, I won't be playing this card in a lot of my human decks, mainly because I'll be experimenting with Shadow after the expansion comes out, because I really do want to see what kind of things they've added to Shadow and see if I can tweak it out to be competitive with human decks now. But yeah, I see this guy being useful. I don't see him being cornerstone quite yet, any more than Shriek is cornerstone right now. Although most Shadow decks will carry 2 Shrieks just in case. I see this being possibly a competitor for Marshland's Sentinel. Because Marshland's Sentinel is an ally neutralizer. This is your item neutralizer. I wonder if they'll have an attachment neutralizer. Of course, you have retreat for that, which makes attachments almost useless right now, which I would be interested to see if they come up with a way to deal with that, whether it's to make them stronger or what. I don't know yet. We'll find out. Yeah, I went off on a weird tangent with that one. But yeah, I like Artful Squire. It's a move in the right direction, and he has uses other than just item destruction, which makes it more likely this card will see main deck play. But yeah, I like that card. I like two of the three human cards. Laerian Diplomat is the next one. It was the third release expansion spoiler, second human ally released. This card I'm kind of on the fence about. The reason being is you may know the other 2/2 cost ally that is in the field and how rarely it is actually seen, despite him not being able to be countered. Now, that ally is really good behind Aeon, but again, he's not very, well, useful other than that. Laerian Diplomat, honestly, I wish I could put it in a shadow deck, if that makes any sense. The only really use against a shadow deck would be like getting rid of Gargoyle's ability, defender status on Dark Flare, and stuff like that. Or possibly, I don't know if it'll work on Molten Destroyer's ability or not, but I would wager it does, which would kind of provide that. I just don't see him coming into main deck play because there are better choices for a 2-cost ally. Laerian Diplomat seems like a late game play on a cheap card. You'd want to see this more like turn 5, turn 6, which is kind of counterintuitive with a 2-cost ally because you're not going to really be pairing it up with something. Because late game, you have a choice. Do you play this 2-cost ally and a, say, 4-cost second ally? Or do you play a Aeon on turn 6? I would go for the Aeon, personally, unless it was a very specific case. I don't see this guy making main deck play, but I do see him maybe being on a sideboard against an opponent who uses, say, a lot of defender or protector status. This would be better against humans than against shadow. And I really do hope my predictions are right, judging by these first spoilers, that shadow will be stronger in this expansion than it is now, because I really do want to see shadow succeed. I prefer playing shadow. It's just not as competitive, unfortunately, which is why in my competition for deck breakdown I'm choosing Shadow Heroes first. It was a toss-up between Gravebone and Terra Dune. But yeah, now we're going to move on to the second expansion card spoiler and the last of the humans on the expansion card spoiler list, the Paladin of Unaxio. Now, its ability, as I said before, is to reduce ice and fire damage by 1. If this stacks, that'd be cool to have 4 of these out. It is a 6 life ally for 5 resources, which means it has that staying power, which we didn't see with the 5-cost shadow allies. Neither of them had really as much staying power as this. This guy would survive pretty much any board wipe outside of a tidal wave, because he can survive that fire. I see this actually getting a lot of play. Sorry if you heard a tap just then. I bumped my microphone. I see a lot of play of this in mage decks, oddly enough, simply for that supernova effect. I can see him being really useful for Nishaven as well, to an extent. Now, he doesn't resist lightning. I kind of wish there was something to resist lightning, which would make human use of Nishaven a lot more useful. Maybe there will be. We never know, because there is a direction it's going with this that could hint at something like that. I would hope that if this ally does stack, that there's going to be other solutions to dealing with him, because I could see him potentially being a really rough board presence hiding behind an Aeon if you can get 2 or 3 of them out, because that would make it almost impossible to get rid of the Aeon outside of a direct kill. Now, his ability. This has been a bit of a point of contention. The ability is target friendly hero or ally has all negative effects removed. This is a common effect. It's present on the priest healing ability, and it's present on Jericho. Jericho's ability can remove all negative effects or destroy target attachment. This is why I don't see Paladin making Jericho more obsolete. Right now, Jericho is a rather weak hero compared to Zana. I'll openly admit to that. Zana is the stronger priest. But the fact that Jericho can, say, remove Crippling Blow, or can remove Lone Wolf, or Speed Strike, or Rapid Fire, kind of gives him a point to work more in conjunction with Paladin of Unoxio than rather be replaced by him. Because yeah, he can remove negative effects, but he can't do anything against these attachments. And as more expansions come out, the viability of... There's heroes that I see becoming more and more viable the more expansions come out, simply because their ability multiplies by the presence of more cards, the bigger flexibility of players to build decks. Because right now there's not many attachments. But if you assume there's going to be attachments in every single expansion, Jericho's going to become more and more powerful because attachments are going to become more and more present in the meta. Now, just like Terra Dune's going to become more and more powerful as more and more items become present and support abilities become present in the expansions. You can see this happening with certain other hero abilities as well. Gravebone, as more possible allies come into play and have interacting effects, his ability is going to become stronger and stronger because these allies are going to be able to come back. I don't see any of the mimicking abilities of allies because, as you can tell, it's going to be weaker than the ability of the hero, obviously. And sorry for the thunder there. I should probably finish up this recording soon. I see it being more beneficial to have these kind of meshing abilities from the allies, despite the fear that it's just going to nullify the use of certain heroes. I would hope that there's going to be more heroes as well that have this ability to grow with expansions. Now, I am kind of going off on a tangent away from these expansion spoilers because I do see a lot of promise in expansions for this game, as long as Wolven can keep releasing them. Yes, you guys are kind of behind the curve on release schedules. We get it. Hopefully that'll smooth out as time progresses. I really hope this company succeeds because this game actually does have some promise. The only thing that's really lacking from it is reactive abilities, and we already sort of see that in traps, and I kind of wish we could see traps for, or trap-like abilities for other heroes. Maybe give mages a spell sync, or give Wolven a counter strike, or anything like this. I think it'd be interesting to see those kind of jump into other heroes. I do think there is a lot of potential in expansions for this game that hasn't really been tapped yet, and these allies show a little hint at what could be done, but they're just a drop in a greater pool of things that we could see come from this game as far as game mechanics go. Some people kind of denounce Shadow Era as being overly simplistic in its rules because it doesn't have counter spells, it doesn't have instants, it just has you play your turn and the other person plays their turn. I personally see that there is potential for increasing strategy, and possibly even after enough expansions release, decks might move towards a 60 card format despite the minimum being a 40 because of how the play happens. I think it might move to the point where this is necessary to basically be able to deal with a general threat rather than individual threats. But yeah, I should probably call it quits because according to my little timer, I've been going on for about 30 minutes. If you guys would like to have more discussion about the Shadow Era expansion, be sure to comment below. I'll reply the best I can, and I will be willing to share any opinions on any thoughts you have as far as the expansions go and where I think future expansions could be going, or where I think future expansions should be going. I'm really open to discussing that, and I would invite you guys to discuss that below as well. I'm also going to include something else special in the description, which is going to be a link to 2 audio tracks on a royalty selling site. Basically, I would be able to purchase the track and have it be royalty free for the series. I want your opinions on which one I should sample for an intro. This isn't going to happen overnight. It's going to be something more towards next year. I'm planning to build an intro for this, and I'm curious which song you think fits Deck Breakdown better, or which one you just prefer the sound of better. So be sure to vote on that below. Just comment with the title of the song somewhere in your comment, and I'll look at the votes and see what you guys think. And if you know of any other songs that you find on the site that I'm going to link, be sure to just tell me the name of the song and I'll look it up and see if I like it. But yeah, I'm looking for an intro song. But yeah, I'll see you guys next time on Deck Breakdown. Sorry for rambling for those of you that don't like hearing my opinions. And hope you enjoyed the rambling for those that do. But yeah, I'll see you guys next time. This has been Alzarath. I can't even pronounce my own name. But yeah, peace out. Catch you next time. Be sure to like, subscribe. Definitely comment below. Comments are what I would really love to see. Keep gaming.